Hi, this is James Clarence Rothschild, and I'm a supporter of my country, the United Kingdom, to stay and remain with the European Union. Before I handed my own words to reason why I decide to support Britain to stay with the European Union, and I will tell you my opinion and combined with BBC's opinion about the UK should stay with the European Union. I would like to warn all of sorry guys, I need to adjust my lighting. First, I would like to warn the Brexit supporters. What does Brexit mean? Brexit is a word that has become used as a shorthand of saying the UK's withdrawal from the European Union, merging the words Britain and exit. So it creates the word Brexit. I would like to warn Brexit supporters. The Brexit could become the worst ever, the biggest fatal mistake ever had in British history. But who are the Brexit supporters? Who wants the UK to leave the European Union? Well, let's say you might know the UK Independence Party, which gained much popularity these days, led by Nigel Farage, but he is not the leader of the Brexit supporters or Leave EU supporters. Those who are in the camps of Vote Leave, Leave EU, and Leave EU sides are those who want Britain to leave the European Union, and also several members of the ruling Conservative Party in the House of Commons. And why do they want the UK to leave the European Union? Because they believe the UK is being held back by the EU, according to the BBC. Well, that's not true, in my own opinion. Which they say imposes too many rules on business, and charge billions of pounds a year in membership fees for little in return. That's not true, in my own opinion. France and Germany charge more euros a year in membership fees, but French and German economies is not even good than the British economy. That's my own opinion. They also want Britain to take back full control of its borders and reduce the number of people coming to the UK to work. Whoa, that's too rude, man. One of the main principles of EU membership is free movement, which means you don't need to get a visa to go and live in another EU country. They also object the idea of ever closer union and what they see as move toward the creation of the United States of Europe. That's not true. Remember, the UK has maintained the opt-out from ever closer union, but that's fine. Ever closer union not always associated with the United States of Europe, but it means that a European unity. But who are people? But who prefers the UK to stay with the European Union? Of course, Prime Minister David Cameron and most business leaders, most political parties in the House of Commons are supporting most political parties in the UK are support for remain for the UK to the European for the UK to stay. In the European Union, and several business persons in a letter to the Times, and then several politicians, most of Conservative Party members, and then two big parties alongside the Conservative, 60% Tory party members like Labour and the Liberal Democrats, and several political parties in the UK are supported the UK to remain with the European Union. as well as several figures from EU member states and outside of EU and then several global organizations, businesses, newspapers and magazines in the UK, and several organizations, trade unions registered in the UK, several individuals from inside the UK and outside the UK, and then letters from healthcare professionals, lawyers, fellows of Royal Society, university leaders, creative industries, lawyers, already stated before, economists, and military figures in the UK, as well as the historians, wrote down the letter. Composition between endorsements to remain in the European Union versus leave the European Union are about 60 to 40% or 70 to 30%. That's true. And several parties are neutral. But British public seems pretty evenly split on the issue, according to the BBC. But 60 to 70% of the UK of people, not only in the UK but also around the world, prefer the UK to stay and remain with the European Union. Underline this word: once a member of the European Union, then a member of the bigger European unity that stretched from Iceland to Russia. And why do they want the UK to stay? Those campaigning for Britain to stay in the EU gets a big boost from membership. It makes selling things to other EU countries more easier. And they argue the flow of immigrants, most of whom are young and keen to work, fuels economic growth and helps pay for public services. That's true. They also believe Britain's status in the world would be damaged by believing that the British are that the UK are more secure as part of 28 nation club rather than going it alone. So my question to you will be: so would the UK be better remain with the European Union or leave the European Union? So it depends on which way you look at it or what you believe it is important. It's up to you guys. Either I prefer Britain to stay with the European Union and I think you can take your own opinion. You can take your own opinion about Britain should stay with the EU or leaving the European Union. It's up to you. I need to turn on. Welcome back. So let's explore the arguments. Let us explore the argument. Better off or in by these arguments. Let's talk about the cost of membership mentioned first according to the BBC. The BBC stated the BBC itself is a pro-European broadcaster in the UK and supports free voice for the UK to stay with the European Union. The BBC stated they remain in the European Union, but the Remain side view that the economic benefits of EU membership easily outweigh the cost. That's true. Other countries contribute more per person than the UK does. As I told you earlier, Germany and France contribute more euros per person to the European Union than the UK does, because currently I heavily criticize the European Union. It's too much dominant by German Federal Chancellor Angela Merkel. And that's why the British Prime Minister David Cameron wants to negotiate what they want, what the British want, to make more role, to create more dominant role for the UK to the in the European Union, as it's accepted. But I will tell you later what kind of David Cameron wants to the European Union when he met the current president of the European Council from Poland, Donald Tusk, as well as meeting with the big boss of the European Union, Jean-Claude Juncker, the current president of the European Commission. Other countries, after Brexit, the UK will still have to contribute to the EU budget to retain access to the single market. What is the single market actually mean, guys? What is the single market actually mean? Well, let's return to the BBC news page for a while before I continue with the argument. What does the single market mean? Or what is single market? The European Union single market was just completed in 1992, allows the free movement of goods, services, money, and people within the European Union as if it was a single country. It's possible to set up a business or take job anywhere within it. The idea was to boost trade, create jobs, and lower prices. But it requires common law making to ensure products are made to the same technical standards and imposes other rules to ensure a level playing field. Critics say it generates too many petty regulations and robs members of control over their own affairs. Mass migration from poorer to richer countries has also raised questions about free movement rules. Now, compared to the free trade area, a free trade area is one where there are no tariffs or taxes or quotas on goods and all services from one country entering another. The negotiations to establish free trade area can take years, and there are normally exceptions, so agriculture and fisheries might be extended, setting that industries affected and some goods may not be covered. But a single market is like a free trade area that there are no tariffs, quotas, or taxes on trade, but also where there's free movement of goods, services, capital, and people. That is why there is no limit on the number of EU members, citizens who can come to the UK, or the number of British people to the European Union or European Economic Area member states. But there are limits to the UK for Turkish people, Ukrainians, and Russians. Sorry to say for this rude word, Brexit supporters are too stupid. They didn't realize the big family in front of them. But I will tell you later. The Leave EU supporters or Brexit supporters view that the gross cost works out at 350 million pounds a week. If the UK left, billions of pounds would become available for other priorities. For example, like what? Building more infrastructure. I think the UK has a better infrastructure than any other EU member states, I think. Other priorities like health services. Oh, UK provide more health services than any EU members do. What other priorities, huh? The UK would also be able to decide how to spend the money that the EU transfers back to it. That's not possible. Big boss Jean-Claude Juncker already stated that rebels will not allow to enter the European Union again. Now move to the crucial issue, the immigration. Well, I, as part of Remain in the European Union supporters, view that immigrants, especially those from the EU, pay more in taxes than the EU immigrants take out. The British Prime Minister David Cameron's EU deal means in work benefits for new EU migrant workers will be limited for the first 4 years. Outside the EU, the UK would still have to accept free movement to gain full access to the single market. And immigration is good for the economy, that's true. You know the mayor of London, the current mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, he is a son of Pakistani immigrants. Sadiq Khan is a Muslim. His father was a bus driver, immigrant from Pakistan. But they contribute on the British economy as well. Remember, in London, British capital and the biggest city in the UK, about 30 to 40% of its population are foreigners, are immigrants. Some of them already applied for a British citizenship through naturalization, in which they have to take naturalization test for 5 years, staying in the UK plus take life in the UK test to gain British citizenship after 5 years living in the UK, and some of them retain their original nationality, like most Russian billionaires do in London. They retain Russian nationality instead of applying for British citizenship. In fact, Russians entering Britain needs visa. So does British citizens enter Russia needs visa. Well, Brexit supporters view that it's impossible to control immigration as a member of the EU. Hey, that's so silly. Remember what France does? Remember what France did after the terror attacks in Paris in November last year? France is a member of the European Union. After the terror attack in Paris, November last year, France decided to remove Schengen visa entry for EU and European Economic Area nationals. So British people and other EU and EEA members are required a visa to enter France. However, it's temporary until the security in France are improved. And France did well on controlling the immigration. It's the French people who didn't trust their government to control immigration. So that's why in an opinion poll in next year's France presidential election, the far-right politician Marine Le Pen from the National Front Party leads in the opinion poll. However, I endorse a president who is pro-EU, either François Hollande or a candidate in the Republican, the main opposition in French National Assembly. But France controls very well on immigration, while France is a member of the European Union by temporarily remove Schengen free entry for EU nationals until the security in France is going to improve. And after the security in France is improved, the Schengen visa-free entry will be implemented again by the French government. This is only temporary. This is only for emergency in France. And then public services are under strain because of the number of migrants. Maybe didn't read the statistics of fertility rate in the UK. Maybe they only read mortality rates in the UK. you know, migrants in the UK could also work could also work in the UK, but to receive the same wages, receive the same salary as what the British people receive, the migrant will have, especially the EU migrants, have have to wait for 4 years working and living in the UK before they get the same salary as what the British people does, as what the British people receive. Fair. It's fair. Really, really fair. And British people didn't lose their jobs. That's it. And then high immigration has driven down wages for the British workers. That's so silly. High immigration contributes more for the British economy as the migrants do everything good in the UK. Maybe the migrants could be employed as a staff in the BBC. Maybe the migrants could be employed as bus driver in London, and then a train driver, and then staff in so many big companies based in the UK. That's fine. The immigrants who wants to learn to be a better person in the British universities, that's fine. They can contribute to the UK if they decide to stay and live in the UK for the rest of their life. That's fine. And last, the official figures underestimate the true level of migration. I think the fake official figure is the true side of it. It's the true fact behind it. Stronger in Europe supporters viewed Brexit will cause an economic shock and growth would be more slower. That's already warned by several of world leaders. Recently, G7 in an Ise-Shima declaration launched at G7 Ise-Shima Summit in Shima-Mi Prefecture, Japan, last Thursday and Friday on the 26th and 27th May, stated that Brexit could make a heavy turbulence in the world economy. And growth, not only growth, the British development will be more slower if the Britain leaves the European Union. Because the UK depends on the rest of the EU members, especially on the share of exports, then the EU realized the UK. The UK would still have to apply EU rules to retain access to the single market. Brexit would create a big turbulence, a heavy turbulence in the British economy, and would shock more jobs. Because if Brexit happens, multinational companies will leave the UK and would shock more jobs. And the security will be in question then. Well, the Brexit supporters view that UK companies would be freed from the burden of EU regulation. What kind of EU regulation burden British companies, huh? Come on, that's a childish reason. That's the childish view. Trade with EU countries would continue because the UK import more from the EU than the UK export to them. Huh? I think in terms of import, that's a bit true. That's a bit true. But exports from the UK to the EU are bigger. And then the UK would be able to negotiate its own trade deals with other countries. Hey. You need to be enlightened. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has already negotiated so many trade deals with other countries like Russia, Turkey, the USA, China, Japan, Indonesia, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, India, and many more countries during 40 years of the British membership in the European Union. So that's not a perfect view. That's an epic failed view from the Eurosceptics that Britain was able to negotiate its own British-owned trade deals with other countries when the countries decided to leave the European Union. That's not true. The UK has already so many trade deals with other countries during 40 years, more than 40 years, more than 4 decades of British membership in the European Union. And that's why the UK joined so many global organizations, especially global economic organizations, to have more trade deals with other countries during its 40 years membership with the European Union. Now, about sovereignty and laws, Stronger in Europe says that only a minority laws derive from the EU. I think so. And then the UK retains a veto in many important areas, especially in the UN Security Council. The Prime Minister David Cameron's EU deal allows national parliaments to block legislation in the European Parliament. That's what I want. And then some sharing of sovereignty is crucial to enable fair trade across Europe. That's what I want too. But Brexit supporters view that most UK laws are made in Brussels. Oh, that's too stupid. They don't understand geography. Hey, the UK capital is London, while Brussels is the capital of the Kingdom of Belgium. You are Britons or Belgians. If you are Belgians, laws are made in Brussels. But if you are Britons like me, most of British laws are made in Westminster. Most of the British laws are made in Westminster, not in Brussels, not in the European Parliament, not in Strasbourg, not in Luxembourg, not even in Moscow, not even in Beijing, not even in the US Congress, not even in the White House, not even in the Senate of the USA, not even in the House of Representatives of the USA, not even in the National People's Congress of China, not even in the State Duma of Russia. The UK laws are made in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords, in Westminster, in the Palace of Westminster, not made in Kremlin, not made in China, not made in Brussels, not even made by the European Parliament, not even made by the US. Most of the UK laws not only made by Westminster, not only made inside the Palace of Westminster, not only made by House of Commons and the House of Lords, but the UK laws are also made in the Downing Street, in the Scottish Parliament, in the Welsh Parliament, in the Northern Irish Parliament, in the Buckingham Palace, not in Kremlin, not in Beijing, not in Luxembourg, not even in the White House. Not even in the White House. The UK laws are made in London, because the British capital is London. Brussels is the capital of Belgium. Moscow is the capital of Russia. Beijing is the capital of China. Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States of America. Why is that stupid view existed on the 21st century? Most of the British law are made in the UK, made in Westminster, made in the Palace of Westminster, made by the House of Commons, made by the House of Lords, made by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, made by Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. Not made by Vladimir Putin, not even by US presidents, not even by the Communist Party of China, not even by the Workers' Party of North Korea, not even by Kim Jong-un. So I strongly view, that the UK laws are made in the UK, not in Brussels, not in Moscow, not in Beijing, not even in New York City, not even in Washington, D.C., and not even in Istanbul, not even by Ankara. not even by the Ankara Turkish Grand National Assembly. The UK laws are made in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords. That's it. The UK laws are made in the Palace of Westminster, made in the Downing Street, made in the Whitehall, made in the Buckingham Palace, not made by others. So don't be stupid and don't question my intelligence on that. Other member states can vote through decisions against the UK's wishes. As Big Boss Juncker earlier told, if the UK leaves the EU and then wants to apply again to enter the EU, Big Boss Juncker already stated rebels will not allow to enter the European Union again. So the UK will be labeled as rebel by Big Boss Jean-Claude Juncker. That's the risk. The British government has been repeatedly been defeated in cases both to the European Court of Justice. I think the ECJ needs to be reformed then. Leaving the EU is the only way to regain full sovereignty. Oh my God. Listen carefully. I'm a British national, live in Indonesia. Indonesia is a Muslim majority country, the biggest Muslim majority country in the world, and is a founding member of ASEAN in 1967, alongside with Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines. And Indonesia holds big stake in ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. But if Indonesia, as a member of ASEAN, lost its sovereignty as a member of ASEAN, or if Singapore, long-time British ally in Southeast Asia, lost its sovereignty as a member of ASEAN, but Singapore implements so many free economic policy that maybe not match with ASEAN values. Is Singapore pleasure to leave ASEAN with that? No. Indonesia and Singapore maintains a full sovereignty despite being member of ASEAN, which is similar to the EU. So leaving the European Union is the only way to regain full sovereignty. That's totally false. Jobs and payment. Jobs. The stronger in EU viewed that 20 million jobs in the UK are linked to trade with the EU. The EU has delivered guaranteed holiday pay, paid maternity leave, and increased protection in the workplace. The UK gets 66 million investment every day from the EU. True. But Brexit supporters view that less regulation in the workplace would create more jobs. Less regulation will create more jobs for useless people, I think. I think regulations are created to search for a better talent, not just filling the office with so many employees that a company or the workplace will face any difficulties to control them. That's happened in Indonesia. And then maternity leave and holiday pay would only change if Britain decides to change them. So why not? So what's the relation with leaving the European Union? That's a national constitution, not EU constitution. Oh, that's stupid. The UK could get more investment from countries outside the EU. Hey. Underline the word again. Underline this word, guys. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has already received trade deals, economic deals, and investments from so many countries outside the European Union during the British membership in the European Union since 1973, when it was known as the European Economic Community. So for the last 43 years, of the UK's membership in the European Union, the UK has received more investment, more trade deals, more business deals, more economic deals from countries outside the European Union. During the British membership in the European Union, Britain has a trade deal with China, and China have already stated London will be the capital of the yuan, will be the center of yuan internationalization. The UK has a good deal with Muslim majority countries, and London stated as the capital of Sharia economy. The US has a good business deals, good business friendship with the UK. New York Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange are the most powerful, maintain strong relationship in capital markets industry. Japan invested more in the UK, especially their motor cars. Japanese manufacturers invested heavily in the UK. Not only motor cars, but Japanese electronics, Japanese goods invested in the UK. Billions of yen, Japanese yen, invested in the UK. South Korea invested their electronics, invested their cars, invested their goods in the UK for billions of South Korean won. Tokyo and Seoul will get more profits from investments in the UK. London returned with more profits to them. The UK has a good trade deal with China. Remember, the UK is one of founding members for the Chinese-led Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. Chinese goods invested in the UK. So many Chinese billionaires invested in the UK, and Beijing get much return after billions of Chinese yuan invested in the UK. As I stated earlier, London is the capital of yuan internationalization, but not for US dollar. London is also the capital, the center of the Eurozone. Several EU members that adopted the euro as their currency placed their center in London. Is that a bad deal? It's a good deal, the best deal ever. Japan invested on trains in the UK recently to form Intercity Express program to build a high-speed intercity train that will link several cities in the UK. Is that a bad deal? So the UK received more investment, more trade deals, more business deals from countries outside the European Union during and while the Britain is a member of the European Union since 1973. So 43 years of the UK being a member of the European Union and received trade deals and investments from so many countries around the world, including countries in Commonwealth of Nations, ASEAN, China, Japan, South Korea, Russia, and the United States of America. Russian businesses in the UK went good. Russian billionaires live in the UK for a long time. American businessmen did so. Investors from countries outside the EU. Remember the Middle East billionaires. Both English Premier League clubs invested in football. Is that a bad deal? Is that a bad investment? Not only Middle East, but also recently Asian billionaires invested in English football clubs, or in the US known as soccer clubs. Is that a good deal or a bad deal? That's the investment, a good investment, while the UK is in the European Union. So underline that word. So underline that word that I already told you. The UK already received investments, trade deals, and business deals from countries outside the EU, while the UK is in the European Union since 1973. And the investments contribute to the British GDP to trillions of pounds sterling that I didn't realize. Some of them sourced from investments from foreign countries, foreign direct investments in the UK. The British government opened for business for everyone to invest in the UK. And lower migration would push wages up. Who says that? It's too silly. Now, policing and security. Stronger in Europe supporters view that Britain doesn't have to open borders because it's not in the Schengen area. Remember Britain voted to have an opt-out in Schengen area alongside with the Republic of Ireland. And geographically, the UK is separated by by the English Channel with France, and geographically separated again with the English Channel with the Republic of Ireland. So the UK doesn't have to open borders because it's not in the Schengen area. But a recent migrant crisis, if the Britain leaves the European Union, it will be difficult to control that. It will be difficult to control because of so many migrants would flock the UK in an uncontrolled way. And the Europol membership allows the UK to share intelligence and fight cross-border crime. The European arrest warrant has returned over 1,000 criminals to face justice in the UK. That's good. But Brexit supporters view that being in the EU makes it easier for terrorists to come to the UK. Since 2005, there are no terrorists coming to the UK again. Hey, this is my view. The European Union is like a family. It's like a family. The European Union is a big family for British people. Remember that. It's a big family of the UK. My Indonesian family taught me at value that family is the most important thing. That family is the most important thing in my life. That's why I want to say this. Brexit supporters are seeking new family. While they didn't realize, in front of their eye, they don't open their eye big. They don't open their eye widely and see a bigger family is in front of their eye, which is the European Union. The European Union is a big family of the UK. Big family, bigger family of the UK. And they help to support the UK to counter terrorists coming to the UK. Since London attacks in 2005, there are no terrorists entering the UK. Several radicalized Muslims are too stupid. They didn't know the real face of Islam. That's all. It's not the good way to leave a family while the family could offer a support for a family member. The UK is a family member of a big family called the European Union, and the whole Europe called the European Unity. If the European Union is unable to support the UK, Russia, Turkey will help. A European unity that stretch from Iceland to Russia, from Reykjavik to Vladivostok, will help the UK to solve British problems. For example, like terrorists. For example, like terrorists. But Brexit supporters are not feel grateful. And they want to see, and they want to meet another family. But they don't open their eyes widely. And they didn't even realize the bigger family in front of them are willing to support British people. The European Union, Russia, and Turkey. A bigger European unity is a big family, bigger family, the biggest family of the UK. Being in the EU makes it easier for terrorists to come to the UK. That's not true. The US will only protect Britain if the UK stay in the European Union. So does Russia. So does China. So does the Middle East. So does Indonesia. Remember, we are human. We are social creatures. We are not able to do most things by ourselves. We need other people. We need help from other people to do something for us that we are not able to do. Like my Indonesian family, hire an assistant to help several things that my Indonesian mother isn't able to do. To relieve the burdens of my Indonesian mother, to do several things that my mother able to do but don't have time. That's not the way. That's not a good view. That's not a good view. We will be stronger. An Indonesian view with work together, with partnership, with partnering together, it could be easier to do something together rather than do something alone. That's why Indonesians call gotong royong. The EU will do the gotong royong thing. Will work together with the UK to counter terrorists. If you say the European Union didn't do anything to counter terrorists, that's not true. There's an OCNIM behind it who wants EU to do nothing and allow terrorists to attack France and Belgium. Who's behind of it? Eurosceptics. Who's behind of it? Europeans for Democracy and Freedom. Who's behind it? Far-right Europeans. Far-right nationalist Europeans, like Nigel Farage, Geert Wilders, Marine Le Pen, and others. They create the unstable they invite the terrorists to attack EU member states to ensure their country is leaving the European Union. And they will break up the European Union. There's the UPNIM behind terrorists entering the European Union. And I believe in that. Who creates that? Far-right Europeans, like Nigel Farage, Geert Wilders, Marine Le Pen, and others. So that's not a good way. That's not a good way. That's not a good way. To create UK more stronger to combat terrorists, it needs to come together. Britons need to come together with the European nationals to combat terrorists entering the Europe. Russia is stable without terrorists. Turkey still to fight with terrorists. Why don't the European Union and Russia offered a help to Turkish government to combat terrorists. To combat terrorists. That's my critic to the European Union. Combating terrorists is not able to do alone. It needs a collective work, togetherness, willingness to work together to solve terrorism. So why does the EU, the UK, Russian Federation help the government of the Republic of Turkey to combat terrorists? Come on, solidarity is more important rather than defiance. Supremacy of EU courts makes it harder to deport violent criminals. I think the International Criminal Court have more supremacy than the European Union courts. I think the International Court of Justice is more powerful than the EU courts. And then the UK would still cooperate with other European countries to fight terrorism after Brexit, as currently happens with the US. Nah, why don't Europe help and form a big solidarity with the US to combat terrorism instead of fighting each other? Remember what Governor of Ohio, John Kasich, stated: all the fightings and arguing is not advancing us. Let me read the transcript from Google. But John Kasich, the governor of Ohio and the former candidate of all the fighting and arguing is not. Here's what John Kasich stated: all the fighting. All the fighting and arguing is not advancing us. It is not the way we're going to strengthen our country. Let's hear directly from John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, when he was still a Republican presidential candidate before dropping off.
Is not advancing us. It is not the way we're going to strengthen our country. We will strengthen our country when we come together.
See? You hear that? See? You hear that?
You interrupted me.
You hear that? All the fightings and arguing is not advancing us. It is not the way we're going to strengthen our country. We will strengthen our country when we come together. That's true. That's true. Fightings and arguing, debating each other is not the way to advance Britain. It is not the way to make the UK more strengthened by debating leaving or remaining with the European Union. It is the right way to strengthen the Britain is come together. Britain's stronger in the European Union because British people come together with the European Union. Those who believe Britain should leave the European Union, they are stupid because they come together with Britons with their own businesses, with their own different businesses. Come together with only Britons. Only Britain. Remember, Britain is a multicultural country, like Singapore and Indonesia. Singapore is a very multicultural country, culturally diverse country. So does Indonesia. The way that Britain will be stronger, the correct way, is when Britons come together with European people. When Britons come together with American people, when Britons come together with Asian people, and when Britons come together with Africans, it's the right way for Britain to be strong, not by arguing leaving the European Union or remaining with the European Union. Not by arguing with that. The UK is already within the European Union, and most of Britain still argue, what does the EU contribute to the UK? It's not the way, not even the good way to make Britain more stronger. It's the way to make Britain more divided, more smaller, and less powerful. That's all. Okay, the stronger in the European Union supporters view that the UK needs to be in the EU to help in the EU in order to take big decisions, helping to take big decisions, not sitting on the sidelines. Leaving the EU would diminish Britain's influence on the world stage. Yes, that's true. Active with veto right in the UN Security Council is not enough. Is not enough. Active with a veto in North Atlantic Treaty Organization is not enough. Because what? The EU is the alternative. Is the alternative path for Russia having a good relationship with the US. So that the US needs the UK and the European Union to have a good relationship with Russia. And China. China needs EU and the UK to maintain a good diplomatic relationship with the US. So does the United States needs the UK and the European Union to act as a broker for the US to have a good relationship with China. So the UK and the European Union is needed by both sides, US and Russia, East and West, because the UK and the European Union is in the center part of the world geographically. The eastern sides need the UK and the EU to have a good relationship with the West. So that the West needs the UK and the European Union to have a good relationship with the East. The UK and the EU acts as a broker, as a bridge between the East and the West. It's a new kind of Silk Road in the 21st century, with diplomacy that involves the UK and the European Union. Once a member of the European Union, in the future would be a member of the European Unity. A bigger scale of the European Union formed with a merger of the European Union and Council of Europe, and involve all European sovereign states as members. And working with the EU neighbors to tackle shared threats has helped keep Britain safer, more secure, and more peaceful. That's what I said earlier. And that's what Governor John Kasich of Ohio already stated. Fightings and arguings is not advancing us. It is not the way we're going to strengthen our country. We will strengthen our country when we come together. Leaving the EU will not make Britain stronger. But Britain stronger when British people come together with European peoples, come together with American peoples, come together with African peoples, come together with Asian peoples. That's what. That's because Asia, America, Europe, and Africa helped Britain a lot to keep Britain more safer, more secure, more peaceful. So does Britain help all over the world. See, all over the world. Leave EU supporters viewed that membership of North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, and the UN Security Council or the UNSC are more important to Britain's defense than the EU. I think EU is important as well. Remember, Britain is also a member of the Organization of the OSCE, Organization of Security and Cooperation, Organization of Security and Cooperation. Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It's also more important for Britain's defense. The EU interferes with defense procurement and wants to set up its own army. That's impossible. British Royal Armed Forces are more powerful than the EU Armed Forces. Britain would have more influence on the world stage as an independent country. Hey, of course, it's already happened. As I told earlier. Okay, let me change the context. The UK is needed by the EU. Remember? Because the EU needs the UK to gain access to the US. The US needs the UK to gain access to the European Union. The US needs the UK to gain access to Russia. The US needs the UK to have good diplomatic talks with North Korea. The US needs the UK to have a good relationship with China. The US needs the UK to have a good deals with members of Commonwealth of Nations, which is led by the UK. So, Britain has already have a big influence. Britain has big influence on the world stage as an independent country and as a member of the European Union since 1973. And I already told you earlier, Britain has already more powerful, more strong, the most powerful. Remember, the superpower is not the US and Russia, but the real superpower is the UK since a few centuries ago. When Britain created British Empire, the largest colonial empire in the world, defeating Mongolian and twice larger or maybe 5 times larger as the Mongolian and Chinese empire combined. So Britain have influence on the world stage since a few decades ago as an independent nation and as a member of the European Union, as a member of the UNSC, as a member of NATO, as a member of OSCE, as a member of G7, G20 and others. Without leaving the European Union, Britain is already more powerful and have an influence on the world stage. Let's move to the education. Support EU side's view that the UK universities receive millions in research funding from the EU. Many of the UK's top scientists come from elsewhere in Europe with the help of EU grants. Yeah. The Erasmus program allows British students to study abroad. Remember, that's the help of the European Union. Or the British government scholarship is called cheapening. Well, Brexit supporters view that only 3% of total research and development spending in Britain is funded by the EU. Hey, come on. Let's think rationally. So, if Brexit supporters argue that 3% of total research and development spending in Britain is funded by the EU, so why does there is an education budget in the British national budget, huh? Think again. Come on, think again wisely. The UK has its own budgets for research and development and for education, that's all. Not always dependent on the European Union. Bank of England has more money than the European Central Bank. Bank of England has more money like the Swedish Riksbank, the oldest central bank in the world. So, European Central Bank is not fund lots of British research and spending, even for 3%, even for 1%. 100% of British research and development spending is directly funded by the British government through Bank of England, through the state budget, not by the EU budget. Remember that. The UK will be able to increase funding to sources of savings from not paying for EU membership. That's egoist. Britain could set on its own immigration policy, which could fast-track scientists and graduates. That's impossible. That's impossible. That's too stupid, guys. Energy and environment. Leaving the EU would see energy bills rise to £500 million sterling. Oh, that's big. That will burden the UK a lot. Oh, it's already an hour, guys. Britain's energy security is stronger as part of the EU because it negotiates as a large bloc. The UK has cleaner water and air and lower greenhouse gas emissions thanks to the EU action. That's true, and the UK has already developed an alternative energy for almost everything. And then the Leave EU supporters viewed that the EU environmental regulations can be unnecessarily burden on business and push up energy prices. Push up energy prices will happen if Britain leaves the European Union. An unnecessary burden on business, I mean, will happen if the UK leaves the European Union. It will create a big loss in the UK economy. Other European countries would still want to sell their electricity to the UK after Brexit. That's fine, I think. Most of the UK's gas imports come from Norway. Britain is not dependent on Russia. Who says that? Britain imports so many gas from Gazprom, Russia. Farming and fishing. And the British farmers would go out of business without the support of the CAP. What is the CAP? What is the CAP thing? Without the support of common agricultural policy of the European Union. For short, without CAP, the British farmers will bankrupt. 73% of the UK farming exports go to the European Union. It was the EU that forced France and Germany to lift bans on British beef. Thank you. Fishers have to be managed to prevent overfishing, like what happened in Indonesia. Overfishing has always happened. Well, Brexit supporters view that Britain's paying more for the common agricultural policy of the European Union that it gets back, so leaving the EU would make more money available for UK farmers, resulting British farmers go bankrupt. And then they don't think about that. The common agricultural policy also wastes lots of money on bureaucracy. Huh? I don't believe in that. The common fisheries policy has devastated the British fishing industry, and I don't believe in that. Thank you very much. Last, consumer affairs. Stronger in Europe, and yes to EU supporters, view that people in Britain save an average of £450 sterling a year because prices are lower as a result of EU membership. Flights and mobile phone charges are among the goods and services that are cheaper than other EU member states. The EU ensures that imported goods meet European quality standards. True. Well, the stupid Brexit supporters feel that the EU red trade makes goods and services more expensive if the UK leaves the European Union, I think. And the UK will impose more taxes, and the EU will impose more taxes on British things to be exported. So that's why it will be more expensive. The recent row over the tampon tax shows the EU has too much power. Britain should be able to set VAT rates, value-added tax rates itself. That's not true. Consumer protection laws existed before the EU and would remain after Britain left. Consumer protection has already existed in so many countries around the world, I think. So that's the BBC views. So that's the BBC and combined with my view about those two arguments. But I personally prefer the UK to stay with the European Union for so many reasons. Aside from that opinion that I already told you, the European Union will be stronger with the UK. And the UK is already part of EU's history. And once a member of the European Union, in the future, it will become a bigger European unity. Britain will be a member of the European Union. Remember that. And the European Union is a big family for Europe. It's a big family for the UK. And the UK is part of big European family. That's all. So in the referendum on 23rd of June, please vote the United Kingdom to remain with the European Union if you don't want to see the Britain destroyed by stupid, ungrateful Brexit supporters who didn't realize the advantage of being a European Union member state. Vote remain for the European Union, for the good, for the stronger United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Remember, not a good way for Britain leaving the European Union to make Britain more stronger, but Britain will be more stronger in the European Union. Together with the European Union, Britain could be the most powerful state in the world, in the British history and in global history. Britain will be more stronger, greater, the greatest Britain ever had in Europe. With Europe, Britain could be more powerful. So, 23rd June 2016, vote Britain to remain with the European Union. Because when Britain gets things stronger in the European Union, Britain will have more power in the European Union, and Britain will lead the European Union, taking over from France and Germany. Once again, 23rd June 2016, vote Britain stronger in Europe. Yes to Europe. Yes to European unity. Yes to the European Union. Once member of the European Union, in the future will be a member of the European unity that will stretch from Reykjavik to Vladivostok in Russia. I'm James Clarence Smith Rothschild. Thank you very much.